And go.
Good evening. I am going to call this our regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, December 7th, 2020 to order. We are conducting our meeting remotely in compliance with the Special Open Public Meetings Act rules issued by Governor Inslee's emergency order. City Clerk, can you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming, present.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, present.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin our meeting, we have a few special rules I want to go over with everyone. First, participation in public comments and public testimony on the public hearing will be accepted by the following methods. 1, written comments and testimony will continue to be accepted by email. Comments received before 5:30 p.m. deadline will be electronically provided to City Council for their consideration. 2, subject to technology limitations, the council will also accept telephonic comments and testimony by calling the number listed on the agenda, 1-509-342-7253, conference ID number 518-661-587#. For the members of the public who are calling in, please be advised that your call will be taken in the order received. To ensure order, your microphone will be muted until you have been recognized to speak. You will be recognized by the last 4 digits of the telephone number you are calling from. At that time, you will be asked to unmute your microphone by pressing *6. Secondly, for City Council members, as with our previous remote meetings, we will continue to use the round robin method in the sequence showing in the speaking and voting chart that has been provided to each of you to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak. With that, may I ask Councilmember Figueroa to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. At this time, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move for the approval. This is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the agenda as presented.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to approving the agenda as provided? Seeing none and hearing none, the approval of the agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. At this time, it is in our agenda is public comment. I understand we have received an email in all of our inboxes from a Boyd Winkler that you should have received and read at this point. I do believe we have some members of the public that are potentially on our call at this time. Before I call on them, will our city clerk please read the rules for public comment?
Members of the public have 3 minutes to provide their comments.
Okay, and our city clerk will be timing any public comments. We have number 6195. Do you have any public comments at this time?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Number 7001. Do you have any comments at this time?
My name is Boyd.
You are muted, sir.
My name is Boyd. My name is Boyd Winkler, and I'm actually the one who submitted the email for consideration.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Your email is being taken into consideration at this time. Do you have any additional comments?
Yes, I do. Basically, my email is in reference to a box van that's been parked on the side of the road in a public street across from our home. And I guess the consideration that I'm really making as to whether or not one, that the box van of this size would be considered a mobile signage in the way that it's detailed. It's kind of an eyesore as it sits, and I'm not sure as to how the weight restrictions are limited in this inside of residential area to 10,000 pounds or greater. If in fact there is a mechanism to potentially look at a size qualification or reduction of a vehicle, just so that we don't end up with a lot of different types of commercial vehicles parked, on city streets in such a fashion, because it really does constitute what is kind of a mobile billboard. And I would add that depending on what message it is, if it was your business, it could be anything of political nature or business advertisement. And I just don't know that we want necessarily to have that on our streets, especially in a residential setting, that could potentially block somebody's view or devalue their home.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Winkler. At this time, I'm not aware of any other public that is on our evening meeting, so therefore I'm going to close our public comment section. We're on to our next item, which is the consent agenda. I'd like to call for a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda.
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. Mayor Belisi, I move for an amendment to the consent agenda, which is to remove item 6L and the approval of the agenda then.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Great, thank you, Councilmember Keel. I second the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. The reason for the removal of item number 6L is that the applicant has requested that her name be removed from consideration to the Parks Commission, and so therefore we're removing it. Not seeing any discussion. Do I have are there any objections to approving the agenda as amended? Hearing none and seeing none, the consent agenda is approved as amended. Thank you very much. We are not starting out good this evening. Okay, at this time we are on our public hearing. It's the comprehensive plan. We have studied this previously. This is our required public hearing. With that, I ask that we get a staff report from our development director, David Swindell. Mr. Swindell, the floor is yours. Mr. Swindell, is he even here?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Swindell, are you muted? Mr. Swindell, asking again. Oh no, let's hope he's not having any technical issues. Is there anybody else on staff that might be able to present the staff report as submitted? All right, we'll wait a few minutes as our illustrious IT team is calling him into the meeting. It appears that he's having some technical issues.
This one, we're going to go straight to
Mr. Swindell, I see you have arrived.
Yes, my apologies, Madam Mayor. My computer just crashed.
Oh, of course, it always does that at the most convenient time. So
Yes.
can you please begin with your comprehensive plan report?
Yes, of course. That moved very quickly. Okay. Just bear with me for a minute.
Technology is always wonderful until you need it.
Yes, exactly. I'm opening up the council package right now, but Acrobat is not responding. I think it may be working now. Okay, the proposed council action this evening is to pass an ordinance adopting the comprehensive plan amendments in accordance with the Regional Growth Center Sub-Area Plan. On July 26, 2018, the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board approved the University Place Regional Growth Center Sub-Area Plan and finalized the designation of the University Place Regional Growth Center. The sub-area plan includes a strategic action plan to assist in plan implementation. The action plan calls for revising the city's comprehensive plan to support zoning classifications in the sub-area. Amendments are proposed to the introduction chapter, the community character, land use, housing, environmental, transportation, and capital facility elements, and the plan map itself. New plan designations were created to show where new zoning classifications will be located. In accordance with direction from the City Council, from 2018 through 2020, the Planning Commission held 12 public meetings and 1 public hearing to review and recommend comprehensive plan amendments for consistency with the University Place Regional Growth Center Sub-Area Plan. On October 21st, 2020, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended the amendments to the City Council that are contained within your packet. That is my staff report.
Okay, this is a public comment, a public hearing, so therefore it is now open for public comment. I understand we do have 2 individuals on the phone. We have not received any email public comment regarding this matter in our email. Number 6194, were you here to discuss or provide comment on the comprehensive plan that's before us this evening? Phone number 6194. Were you here to discuss or provide comment for the comprehensive plan hearing? Yeah, please unmute your microphone, *6.
Got it. I'm just listening.
So were you, yes, we can hear you. Were you here to provide public comment to the comprehensive plan?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just here to listen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Number 7001, you provided public comment. Were you staying on the line to provide comment regarding the comprehensive plan? Would need to hit *6. Okay, I believe he's also just listening. So we have no public comment. With that, I'm going to close the public comment section of this public hearing. It is now on for council consideration. Do I have a motion, please?
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move the approval of the comprehensive plan amendments.
Okay, do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is there any council comments or consideration at this time? Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any comments regarding this public hearing item?
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, any comments regarding this public hearing?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that, again, this is another item that has been a long time coming, at least in my mind, Regional Growth Center. The fact that we've got these changes, I'm looking forward. I want to thank the Planning Commission for all their hard work. I mean, every member, you guys stuck with us and, you know, poured through those meetings and looking at drawing and after drawing and words and wordsmithing and all that. And I, for one, I'm sure my colleagues as well, but speaking for myself, I really, really appreciate the work that you did on this. Having a regional growth center designation in our city is a big thing. And as we move forward as a city and we build out our regional growth centers, and I'll put an S on that, plural, that is going to very much feed into the economic base and the vitality and the livability of our city. So I appreciate your work, and I'm glad this is before us tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments at this time?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo a lot of what Councilmember Keel said, and in addition that this has been a long time coming. The Pierce, the Puget Sound Regional Council always moved the target away just when we approached it and nailed it. And so we had to keep revising and revisiting it. And I would like to give a lot of thanks and gratitudes to the Planning Commission to keep up the effort, and especially our city staff. You know, they could have been frustrated, and I certainly was each time that I thought we had that designation, and they said, oh no, you don't, because you need to go and do this and do that. And it was kind of frustrating, and you could have allowed it to dishearten your team, but you didn't. You just kept on going like a little ever-ready bunny battery, and you did it. You nailed it with a lot of extra hard work and jumping through some hoops, a lot of additional meetings, I'm sure, with the Puget Sound Regional Council and their outbreak committees as well. So thank you for getting this significant designation for our city. It's a real game changer for our economic development, for our livability, for saving our history and our art and our health and well-being components that are now incorporated into this center. And I look forward to seeing the new development in some of the nodes that, you know, have been a little less touched. So maybe we, you know, with a little more touching, and the developers will come on board and make those nodes, the Narrows and Grandview, just as beautiful as our town center project. Thank you.
Councilmember Fleming, do you have any comments at this time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just simply want to say thank you to the Planning Commission and to the staff that worked on this project. I know from my time on the County Council as well as with the council here formerly, a lot of work A lot of time has gone into putting this package together. So thank you, and glad it's before us. And I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, yes, I do have a couple of quick comments, and also wanted to thank the Development Services staff, David and his team, for all the work that's gone into this, and particularly the Planning Commission. If we heard at the beginning a unanimous decision to recommend this, and I don't take that lightly. That's a strong statement of both their understanding and support of this. And it has been a number of years, not just 2 years in the process here, but years before, as Councilmember Keel noted, sort of like Lucy and Charlie Brown playing football and moving the ball just at the critical moment. As Charlie takes a kick. We were Charlie Brown in that setting a couple of times, I think. Councilmember Keel, good analogy. And in any case, but glad we're here, glad to vote on it, and ready to proceed.
I too would like to thank our staff and our Planning Commission and our Citizens Economic Development Commission for their participation in the comprehensive plan and review, and for the input that we received from the community, both builders as well as our local residents, on making this the most efficient and best plan that we've been able to produce since cityhood. And I'm looking forward to supporting this plan this evening. So again, thank you very much to our citizen volunteers and ensuring we get a great product for staff to be able to work on. And I look forward to seeing those projects come to fruition over the next few years and see some quality development going on. Without any further ado, I will ask our city clerk then to take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, yes.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, yes.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, yes.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion carries, Mayor.
Thank you. Excellent. We have one piece down for this evening. We are now moving on to our council consideration, the next item, which was also a big project in conjunction with the comprehensive plan, and that is our form-based code. And I'm going to ask David Swindell, our director of to come forward with his staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I indicated in my staff report for the comprehensive plan amendments, the University Place Regional Growth Center sub-area plan included a strategic action plan, and those actions included the comprehensive plan amendment, which you have just completed, both with the map and the text amendments, but also amendments to the zoning code to support the desired form of development under their new classifications. These include revisions to the use tables in the zoning code to realign them with the new zoning classifications, and the development of a set of common design standards and a form-based code to achieve the urban form. A form-based code focuses on how development relates to the context of the surrounding community, especially the relationship between buildings and the street, pedestrians and vehicles, and public and private spaces. The code addresses these concerns by regulating site design, circulation, and overall building form. Due to this emphasis on design, the form-based code usually provides greater flexibility about the visual aspects of development, how well it fits in with the existing context of the community, and offers a means to create a physical development the community wants, and developers have a clear understanding of what the community seeks. Over time, these benefits can foster greater community acceptance of new development. The form-based code can be customized to the vision of any community, including preserving and enhancing the existing character of one neighborhood or dramatically changing and improving the character of another. Now, if you'll just bear with me, I'll get to the ordinance itself. I'm trying to, excuse me. I seem to have lost my way. Like you say, technology.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. The motion before you tonight is to approve the amendments to the zoning code that were unanimously recommended to you by the Planning Commission. And with that, my staff report is complete.
Okay. I understand we have the chair of our Planning Commission on board this evening. Mr. Quisenberry, do you have any items to add to the staff report this evening?
None, Madam Mayor. Just, I just want to join in with saying that, we're happy that we're bringing this to a conclusion. It was a lot of work, and in no small part, obviously, to the staff and David and Becky and everyone that worked on this, Kevin as well. And we know this touched upon many of the parts of the city and the employees, and we're excited to move this thing forward. And so on that note, I believe, as we discussed, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but Madam Mayor, but I wanted to extend my term for another year to complete this, and I've offered my resignation now. Will of course stay on board if needed until a replacement is found through into the next year. But I'm glad that this is coming to this conclusion, and I think I can speak for the entire Planning Commission that we're proud to have finished this up, and I think personally excited that was able to hang on and help move this forward.
Yes. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Quisenberry, for your leadership on the Planning Commission to see this extensive project through to its conclusion. It was a heavy lift on the part of the Planning Commission and the citizens involved in with their input and stuff. And I want to thank you, and thank you for your service on the Planning Commission.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Great. With that, are there any direct questions? This is our second or third study session on this form-based code. Does anybody have any questions before I go to the public comment? Okay, not seeing any public comment. We receive, yes, Ms. Councilmember McCluskey.
Yes, we had a couple citizens, one developer and one business owner email their concerns to the glazing and then also the grid pattern. So my understanding is that the glazing was going to be an amendment to this piece. So I'm not sure how to address their concerns with in regards to this that they had in comments with the form-based code. Okay. So how do we move forward with that discussion? And
Mr. Swindell, can you address Councilmember McCluskey's question?
Yes, the Planning Commission was unable to review the forming proposal to address the additional glazing requirement. The policies in the comprehensive plan as well as the regional growth center sub-area plan call for a set of design standards that reflect the vision of the community. There was a recommendation made by the executive branch that we increase the amount of glazing required, and then to present that to the city council for their consideration. We do have in the planning commission work plan that you just completed, approved for 2021. The planning commission is preliminarily scheduled to adopt or consider two of the measures. First, in a Northeast Business District plan, and then also later in the year, after we've had some time to be able to understand what needs to be changed or clarified in the form-based code, an opportunity for the Planning Commission to come back and look at that. In the interim, this is the proposed new standard for upper floor facades. I will say that the zoning code and the design standards provides us with flexibility and discretion. If the applicant can show that they can provide a better design concept, either for that standard or exceed another standard, we have discretion in order to waive or lessen some of the requirements.
Okay. Councilmember Fleming, you had a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. David, that kind of raises the question, if this was a matter that was going to be taken up by the Planning Commission and you simply didn't have time, and now this is being brought before council, what is the urgency then to adopt it now if it's incomplete, versus getting a complete product and bringing it back to the council and giving the Planning Commission the opportunity to weigh in?
I felt that in reviewing the recommendation, the executive determined that we needed stronger standards than we currently had in order to ensure that future development between now and that time did meet the intent. The glazing a requirement for upper floors was just a guideline. It was not a standard. And we had checked with an experienced architect we often use to consult with, and they made this recommendation as a stopgap.
When you say executive, which executive are you referring to?
The city manager.
I guess I was going to hold my comments till comment time, but I'll just add it to my questions here. I think it's imperative that when things come before council, that we get away from this piecemealing stuff together with the idea that we'll come back and fix things that are incomplete. My request and preference is, the council gets complete products unless there's an emergency or some other reason not to do so. We've got really great commissions. We've got great leadership in those commissions. I think they need to have that opportunity to weigh in and give a thumbs up, thumbs down recommendation. But I personally, and I'm speaking for myself only, I don't like piecemealing legislation together just to get something through when it's incomplete. So, those are my thoughts. And I was all on board to pass this thing tonight, thinking that those questions had been addressed and we had a completed product ready to go. But I'm not one who likes to vote on things that are just not complete. So that's my 10 cents, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Figueroa, you had your hands up. Do you have any questions, not comments?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The clarification and question would be, this is actually to Cliff as our planning commissioner. And that is, I heard David's comments about the flexibility that's embedded in there to incorporate the concerns that have been brought forward. Do you feel that if it was to be brought back to you, whether it be now or later, that it would make any changes based on the commission's work and understanding of where development should occur in UP?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilmember Figueroa. When I heard of this, I did not think there would be strong resistance by any part of the Planning Commission to allowing the staff to make these flexible changes. I think, often, as you know, the Planning Commission, whether we debate internally, there's some items that definitely you can see a very difference of opinion on. This kind of glazing has come up before in the past, and I haven't seen a strong response. I can't speak for the entire Plan Commission at this point, but I think there would be something where we would take direction from the staff in terms of this item here. And I would say the same thing with, with the grid and kind of the modifications they've made there as well.
So just to further clarify, David, this is for you. If I heard you correctly, the comments that were emailed to us on the glazing specifically, it seemed that their concerns are answered in the flexibility that is embedded into this form-based code.
Yes, so we can do a more complete study of this during the Planning Commission. Take another look at this. The code does, under 19.85 050, provide flexibility during design review to provide the applicants a way to show that they can either meet the intent of the design standard or provide other additional amenities in order to offset the requirement. And as long as that is put in writing and it makes sense, we can approve that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, you had a question.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Yes, I do. David, where exactly in the code is what is the citation for the requirement as it's currently written?
The current requirement for the glazing, I believe, is 19.50210.
Okay.
It provides windows. There are 4 standards under that section. There were formerly 3 standards, as I indicated earlier, with a recommendation to provide between 25% and 50% upper floor glazing as a guideline. As I indicated, it was felt that that guideline was not sufficient and that it should be a standard.
Thank you. Gives me an opportunity to look at the code, so I may have some comments when we get to that section of the meeting. Thank you for now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, you had question.
Yes, question is, I have no technical expertise in the area of this form-based code. However, I was wondering if during the process of creating this document, were these organizations and people given an opportunity to voice their opinions on it, or bringing it up at the 11th hour, the only opportunity they had?
With regard to the glazing and the grid, technically, these are new requirements, but we have asked the numerous property owners. We identified 90 opportunity properties within the city. We reached out to some of these same property owners and others to help us with the form-based code. We went out, we met with them, we met with community stakeholders numerous times and asked people what they wanted to do with their properties, how we might be able to help them redevelop their properties, that developed codes aren't going to stand in their way to do that, but also to find and meet the community's vision for these areas. So there was an extensive outreach program. And although the glazing was a guideline rather than a standard, for example, with the grid system, it's very clear in our code and in our policy that it is the intent of the city to create grids to improve the circulation in these areas of the city that have large blocks and poor connections to our existing grid system.
So if I understand you correctly, then these people who are now raising these questions were involved at the table when this form-based code was created, correct?
Well, this particular developer, one of the people here is a developer who has just recently made a proposal to us that didn't meet with the intent of the code. But one of the property owners that did send you comments we requested numerous times to meet with them. I can't recall if we actually had I did not have a specific meeting with the property owner, but others in the city may have.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Keel, do you have any questions?
I do, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Keel.
You're muted, Councilmember Keel.
That's what happens when you hit the button twice. Like Councilmember Fleming, I was ready to pass this tonight, and I'm still trying to see if there's a way for me to get there as far as supporting going forward. When I heard about these two amendments, the glazing as well as the grid, I was excited. In particular, I'm excited about the grid in that area. I'm also excited about the glazing due to what practices around the country and what added benefits that brings to the value and the look and the feel of our city. And so my question is, I must have missed something, because I didn't see someone that wrote and said they had some issue with it, and I very well could have missed it. I get a lot of emails, so I may have missed that email, but I don't know who it is or what specifically their concern is about those two things. But here's the thing: if it's a business owner or someone and this hinders them from doing their business, that's one thing. But if it's a developer that, and these are my words, that want to do this quick and dirty and that way, as opposed to doing something that's going to be nice and beautiful and that's going to be long lasting in our city, then I'm probably not as opposed to not as in favor of looking and not doing something for that reason. As a council member of this city, I want to make sure that what we do and what we put in all those areas are going to be things that we're all going to be proud of, that our children and grandchildren are going to be proud of, and that is going to last a long ways, and not something that's going to be anything other than that. Thank you, Mayor.
Did you have a question?
Well,
this
the
was
question
the question section.
Yeah, the question was, and I thought I said it, was who said that they were, not for it, and what exactly did they say that they didn't like about the glazing and the grid? I mean, I don't recall the email.
Okay, let me just summarize what I saw in the email. I think the proposal is to require 60% glazing on the upper floors, on the primary facades, those that face the street, and a lesser amount, 40% on other facades. And then I just explained the discretion that we have in enforcing those. One of the glazing comments, or the one that I saw, indicated that while we have required 50% ground floor glazing, that is not problematic. In fact, increasing it to 60 there would not necessarily be problematic for them. However, they felt that the upper store glazing was a little excessive. The developer, or the emails came from Paul Casey, the architect for the 3 buildings in the town center area that you're familiar with, Clearview, latitude 47, and
Bridgeview.
what is it?
Bridgeview 125.
Bridgeview 125. Those all, the glazings there range between 25 and 40% on the primary facades. And he felt that that was, provided good urban form for the community. And had indicated that he is also working on another project in which they'll be building similar buildings down at the Grandview Plaza area, and that felt that 60% requirement would hinder their ability to both for structural reasons as well as energy code reasons. They felt that that was probably excessive. That was the primary comment, and then that we received a second email from the developer which has employed this architect, and he also agreed and asked the council to reconsider on that matter.
So if I follow up, so is everything on the glazing nothing to do with the grids?
That was the glazing one. On the grid system, one of the property owners for a proposed development in the Narrows Plaza area was felt that grid would preclude redevelopment of that area as it is proposed.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like we have a way to mitigate the issue with the glazing, because the words that we have, we've got some flexibility. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And on the grid, is there a way that we can get to, that you talk with the developer to get to some kind of understanding with them?
Yeah, that's also subject to the design review process, and the same provisions in 19.85 regarding design review apply to that as well. It's less, and as well as if you wanted to go a variance route, that's also another tool within the zoning code to get there. It's a little bit more difficult with a finer grid, but I think we can certainly talk and work through some of these issues with developers who come in to see if we can meet the intent of the provisions in the code and promote development that is consistent with our vision.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the vision there. I as one council member, I would not want to leave that vision for something that was different. I mean, and I think staff understands that, at least the way we've said that. So that'd be great. Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm done now.
Thank you. As referenced throughout the conversation we've had under the public comment section, we did receive 4 emails from Paul Casey, Kevin Berg, David Dirth, and David Spiegel, all of which has been referenced and mentioned in the comments both by staff and council members. So at this time, may I have a motion for council consideration?
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval, excuse me, I move for the approval of the form-based code.
Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any council comments at this time? Council Member Figueroa.
Yes. Just a moment. Do we have oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had a hearing. Never mind. We don't have a hearing.
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Council Member Figueroa, do you have any comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I'm in favor of getting this out. There's development that's being put on hold in University Place for over 2 years to allow this to happen. And like many other laws that we apply, and legislate, they do for the most part. If they don't, then that's why we go back. There's nothing wrong. It's done all the time. A lot of precedents there that you go back and make corrections and adjustments to any legislation that occurs, but certainly not to stop an important legislation like this policy that we sorely need right now for development in University Place. From what I heard from the testimony from staff as well as our commissioners, that it does allow for the concerns to be mitigated, and so with that, I believe that in the future, if there's something that just doesn't seem to be able to be moved for one reason or another, that can be brought back to the council, just like many other issues have been brought up from the first town center overlay, commercial zoning, and everything else that was done the first time. Nothing is perfect. It comes back, and the planning commission looks at it again. We look at it again, or whatever council is there, and as you've seen, we've made quite a bit of adjustments over the year. Didn't hurt anything, and but certainly if you wait until you get it perfect, we may never have passed any legislation on anything. And so I believe certainly that allowing for public comment is important. I think that the process was open, the outreach was there, and at any point, even if we say, well, let's wait, and then we come back, oh, well, there might be a new guy, a new person on the block, a new developer on the block that wants to do something. Oh, I see that you're doing this just tonight, so I want something changed. You can't do business that way. That's not the way legislation should occur. So I'm really encouraging. There's, like we said in one of the last study sessions, there's approximately 5 developers, property owners that are waiting for this to pass, and it would be a shame for this council, after working on this long enough, to delay and allowing property owners and developers to do business in University Place, especially in a time like this when I'm surprised anyone is willing to even risk any dollars in investment and anywhere. And if they're willing to do that, I say we need to open the door to allow that to happen. Now, of course, I think that being said, you want to do it in a smart way. And I think that this form-based code does a very good job of doing that. Perfect? No. Nothing will ever be perfect. In fact, that's why we allow things to come back for adjustments and changes. Thank you.
You know, I've been waiting to say this, Mayor. You're muted, Mayor.
Councilmember Keel, do you have any comments?
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Yes, Mayor, thank you. You know, like I said in the question period, I was all set to move this forward, and then I was getting shaky. But now with what we talked about and testimony that I've heard, I'm comfortable again with this legislation. And I want to say that I certainly honor and appreciate the owners, business owners and landowners and the developers that we have in our city. I mean, you're the lifeblood of our economy here in our city, and that's not lost on me at all. But what is encouraging to me is this. This work has been done by our planning commission and staff. They've gone through a long process of getting a lot of people's input, and a lot of discussion has been said. And of the 2 items that have been raised tonight, it sounds like that we have the flexibility in that code to talk about these one-offs where developers have concerns about certain percentages of this and that, and those things can be mitigated. And that's what we pay staff to do in that regard. And so I would lean heavily on that process. The other thing is, I think it's very important that we as a council, as Councilman Figueroa said, I think it's very important that we have standards and that we articulate them and lay them out, even though they may not be perfect all the way around, because it sets the bar for us and for the business community about what we want our city to look like. And I think these two things added to the form-based code are two great adds, because it further defines, along with form-based code, with those pictures, it tells everyone that wants to do business in our city, this is how we want our city to look like. And if we don't do that, then we end up with a hodgepodge of, these are my words, substandard designs and buildings that don't look like they belong together with anybody or each other. And it's just not something that's attractive, nor something that will hold its value or continue its attractiveness to bring in other businesses. So, I mean, we've got, some leaders in the business community in our city with Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and a few others. And we got a championship golf course in our city, and we want to keep that level standard being built in our city. So I was falling off the wagon. I'm back on the wagon, and I'm fully in support of this legislation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keough. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, yes, I have one comment. The form-based code is a very complex document. I think it's 500, 600 pages long. I'm sure that in that document, there are other questions that are going to come up. It's a dynamic document. It will be changed. I think it's unfortunate, as Councilmember Fleming discussed or commented on, that we don't have a complete document to vote on. It hasn't even been voted on yet, and we're already talking about changes to it. But having said that, I think it is an important document. We need it, and so we can move forward with the development that we so desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. I look at the form-based code as not only a visioning, but in that visioning, a flux and flow that changes to the consumer and business needs over not only a short-term period, but over a long-term haul. So in that form, there's dynamic considerations for those changes, that we don't have to continue to change the structural components of our city. And with that said, that is why I think that it's more of a visioning piece, and as the visioning comes into reality, into the mission and the technical strategies, all these things are going to change. And just like the Town Center project, we'll be seeing some of those changes come up before City Council, as well as our planning commissioners, to flex and flow with the market drivers, because we do want to match that and the transit pieces to it as well, that will influence as we want business. We want to attract business, but we also want to attract people for their quality of life to play, shop, live, and also commute, which is an important component of the regional growth center. It's the commuter traffic flow and the walkability pieces to that. And I think with this form-based code, it hits a lot of those marks and creates additional value drivers for higher end developers to be more keen and interested in the nodes of Grandview, as well as the Narrows Plaza area. So I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming, do you have any comments at this time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, first and I guess and foremost, I want to just say thank you to the wisdom of the council that's already spoken, and really thank you to David and the rest of the staff and the folks on the Planning Commission that have truly put a lot of time into trying to define what this form-based code would do, and to Councilmember McCluskey's point, really help shape the vision of what our city would look like. You know, it's one thing to have a city that kind of has a hodgepodge theme versus a city that has some continuity of flow through it. And I think this document would do that. You know, having said that, you know, back to Councilmember Javier's Figueroa's comment about, are we looking for perfect documents? The answer is no. We never can get there because there's always going to be a matter of opinion among those that are elected or appointed to serve the community, and it's through that process that we get to hopefully some sort of consensus. I think if we waited for perfect laws, we wouldn't have a single law, you know, on the books. You know, I did have the opportunity to meet with several of the developers that are wanting to develop in our city, and it is not the form-based code that is keeping them from developing here. It is actually some other rules and regulations that we have in place that I've already requested the city manager and staff to look at to see, to really evaluate the feasibility of revising those so that it's beneficial to the city as well as to the developers. So, you know, for the record, it's not the form-based code that's keeping developers out of here. Certainly, you know, what I like about this code is that it does have some flexibility into it. But and I had the chance to really review the document that we have before us. But the flexibility that we've been talking to tonight, I did not see that in the document. And if I missed it, I would certainly rely on the staff to show me otherwise, but I did not see that. So do we have design standards right now in the city? Absolutely. We're not in a void of those. What we're trying to do is take what we have to another level. And I think this document, given the opportunity to complete it versus this necessary need to pass a document so we can say we passed something, doesn't get me there. So back to Councilmember Keel's comment, we're falling off the wagon. I fell off the wagon. I was 100% all set to pass this thing this evening, but I fell off the wagon, and for whatever reason, I haven't been convinced to get back on it. So I'm going to decline at the moment. I'll probably be the lone person on that one, but that's okay. You know, that's what democracy is all about. But for my previous comments and these comments, those are my concerns. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, do you have any comments at this time?
Yes, Mayor Bellisi, I do. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. And so, you know, on the big picture side, the form-based code, I think, is a great step forward for us as a community. I think it does a lot of good things. It helps identify how we define ourselves, how we want our appearance to look, what the future is going to be for us, and what we expect to get out of it. And there's a lot of details there. As Councilmember Pro Tem Lee pointed out, something like 500 pages, literally hundreds of design details. And the reality is we're not going to get it all perfectly right coming first out with it. It's going to take some time, and we've recognized that. In our Planning Commission work plan, we've provided for, or they have provided for, opportunities to revise and look at the code as things are discovered. And so the expectation is somewhere during 2021, they'll have a chance to tweak things as experience comes to us and rework some details. I'm glad that we have that forethought in the work plan. Nonetheless, though, the code has been a tremendous amount of work, the form-based code through the Planning Commission. It has taken years. Commission Chair Quisenberry, thank you so much for your leadership through all of this. And what a wonderful capstone, I believe, for you to be able to present this on your way out. But I really do appreciate all your hard work and the work of your fellow commissioners. And this really is what shows that. I think it has a lot of value to us in the community. And thank you for the dedication and the effort that it's taken to get there. A lot of meetings and a lot of thought. And that brings us to tonight. I don't want to lose sight of the value of the code, the form-based code. And I say that because I am bothered by where we are on one of those details tonight. The grid system is something we do need, and I can understand that. And while I think the details of that can be discussed with staff and in the development process and fine-tuned, because it's a generalized grid. It's not an absolute have to do it right there. It's generalized. There's room to move. But David, we had a change in the code with regards to glazing, and we moved it from being guidelines to standard. What's the difference from a guideline to a standard?
Mr. Swindell, you are muted.
So I mentioned that because obviously there was a reason for that move. And I question how much less flexibility we add with that or lose with that on this issue of glazing. While he's coming back up, and let me see if he has a message for us here. I don't think so.
Nope.
In any case, in addition to that, our previous guideline in the original draft and what we have built to today is 25%. We're moving that's for the upper stories. So the main story, or that's the ground floor story, is 50%. The suggestion would be to move it from 50% to 60%. A small change and doable, it would seem. The difference of let's see. The difference of moving, though, the upper stories from 25% to 60% is obviously a significant change. David, you're with us again, and I saw you had a message, but please, are you? Is your mic on now?
Yes, it is. Let me. I've got an echo here.
Indeed, you do.
Hopefully that takes care of that. The standard is a requirement, whereas guidelines are optional.
Okay, and so we talk about that when you spoke of that earlier piece of the code that gave the at the administrative level the opportunity to work out some of these details. When it's a standard, what's the level of flexibility that you have? If it says 6% glazing on the street side of the upper stories, how do you get to a lesser number?
The 19.85080 is our design standard review process, and it includes a number of different criteria in order to this echo has gotten me confused, so hold on a minute.
You bet. By all means, take a moment. I remember in Disneyland, way back when, there was this one free exhibit, not many of those, in Disneyland you could walk up to, put a phone to your ear, and you could speak, and there'd be a 2-second delay, and you'd hear your voice. You couldn't talk for a whole minute without going crazy. It just wouldn't let you. David, I can relate to what you're hearing there, and I hope it gets under control there. I was a little shorter then. I guess another question by David is working on the audio issue. Are you with us, David? In the correspondence we received from
okay, Mr. Swindell.
Computer as well as the phone, and finally my computer came back up after all this time. So I tried to turn off my phone, but now I'm back on. Okay, so basically in 19.85, 1985-080 is the design review process. And within that, there are a number of criteria on how to find that a developer has met the intent of the design standards, either by meeting the standard itself or proposing something that meets the intent of the standard or provides different alternative, like more of one standard. So for example, if they provide additional landscaping, we could say, well, we can now accept less glazing. It's very, it's a negotiated type of agreement, but it does provide us with that kind of flexibility. You are right that going from 25 to 60% is quite a bit, and we've heard from some of the other people like Paul Casey that they don't meet that standard now, but we would work with them on providing some flexibility.
Mm-hmm. And in Paul Casey's letter, I think it was Paul.
Yes.
He had, or maybe, yeah, it was Paul. He had said that his projects that he had done along Bridgeport were somewhere between 30 or 25 and 40% glazing. Does that sound about right to you? Do you think that's an accurate statement, more or less?
That's what I read.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's what you read. In your experience of reviewing projects and what your office would approve, does that sound like it's actually what's built? Is something in that range?
Well, you know, we haven't in the past looked at the percentage of glazing on upper floors because, as I've indicated in the past, it was just a guideline. Okay. And, you know, we guideline between 25 and 50%. So we didn't really place a lot of emphasis on the amount of glazing they were providing. Our emphasis has always been on the standards and on the ground floor glazing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the ground floor glazing has been a standard that you've applied previously. The upper floors guideline, I suppose. So the reason for all of this is it's a big change, and what we have come accustomed to along Bridgeport in the town center, the Village at Chambers Bay area, is 40% or a little less of upper store glazing. I don't think it looks bad. I think it's actually the character that we've become used to, and that helps define a bit of who we are. 60% is obviously, well, half again as much glazing on the project. And what does that mean is it drives cost. It also challenges energy code, and that also drives cost. And so when it's a much different style at 60% glazing, it's more of a inner urban style, more of a reflective glass box type approach. And I'm not necessarily sure that's where we want to be. Mm-hmm. So that's the question in my mind. And I would prefer to see that standard not at 60%. And up until a week ago, it was at 25, but rather at 40%, perhaps 45%. So with that in mind, I move that we amend section 1950-210, subsection 4 to 40%, where it now says 60% glazing for the upper floors.
Second, Councilmember Figueroa.
Okay, I have a first and a second. At this time, we need to take action on this amendment. Discussion will ensue. Are you done, Mr. Worthington, or Councilmember Worthington?
Thank you for asking as the maker of the motion. I appreciate that. However, I think I described the reasons for it, and I'll let that stand. Okay.
Councilmember Figueroa, you had your hand up. Do you have a response to the motion on the floor?
Yes. I had my hand up for a different reason, but I'll wait for that comment later. In answer, the reason I second this motion, thank you, Councilmember Worthington. You brought a lot of clarification that was not in David's clarification about, it seems like, David, I'm sorry, but your clarification when we were asking you about this is that it appeared to me that it was a guideline, not a standard, and I got confused. And after hearing Councilman Worthington, I agree with him. It's a standard. It becomes a much harder threshold of between staff and developers, who's going to push who in what direction, and it makes it a much harder, and it is not as flexible as that it appeared to me when I was speaking with you on this on that whole thing. And so I agree that at this point, I'm convinced that the flexibility is not there as it appeared in the early conversation. And so with that, I think going from 25 to 40 is a compromise. Certainly, it's a lot closer to what Councilmember Worthington mentioned, is more like we're accustomed to now, which we are happy with and like, and have a lot of good comments. And I think that that would really set the stage for. I don't like the fact that we put it in such a requirement. And I know you said something, well, landscaping. Well, what kind of landscaping you're going to have in some of this urban area? Come on, seriously. So I think that is and I hope that this council can agree that making this amendment at this time is okay. That's the hard work that we are willing to put in and make that decision. I don't think it really needs to go back to the Planning Commission. I believe that after working on this for 2 years and dealing with glazing in the previous meetings that we've had on retail frontage as we built the town center. I remember those conversations. So I think that now we're well prepared to understand this a little bit better and appreciate the fact that 60 is too much, especially if there's no real way to wriggle themselves out of this. And you may be flexible, Mr. Swindell, but you might not be there 5 years from now. And the next person may not be that flexible. And so I think that we need to protect our city and our vision, our developments, but also the marketplace. And I think this is very, very reasonable. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember McCluskey, you had your hand up. Do you have a comment in regards to the amendment on the floor?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We need to also be cognizant that it isn't 4 or 5 stories. This is 110 feet. So if you're looking at glazing up to 60% versus 40%, you're going to get a lot more structure versus glass. I understand that some glass facades can be very energy efficient. They've improved those quite a bit. I don't know what extent. I'm not a developer. However, going up higher with less glass facades, I would also like to see some interesting design features so that it's not a blocked building with rectangular, window facades, and maybe a few little minor adjustments here and there, because that's not the design features that I've been noting in the form-based code or interested in having in our city. I really don't want it to be a whole glass facade like Seattle, but I don't want it to be a warehouse looking structure, because I want people to feel comfortable. The grandmas and the grandpas taking their grandkids along there. I want them to feel like they belong to it, that, you know, there's not an artificial environment. And that is why landscaping features was very important in this, because there's going to be plazas and grass nodes and corridor designs to establish natural aesthetics along with the architectural designs. And so I like the city council to also note that. I concur with the flexibility for the developer to design, but also within that framing. And so, Mr. Swindell, if you can comment on my comment and concern that reducing the glass glazing will not create a more artificial looking building when it approaches 110 feet. You know, I know it's probably unlikely, but it could happen.
Yes, it could.
Mr. Swindell, you have a comment for Councilmember McCluskey?
That was a question, but you know, I think it's reasonable what you're asking for. The reduction from 60 to 40 does make sense. Gives us certainly, it makes it easier to negotiate downwards from a lesser standard. And based upon what we heard from Mr. Casey, you're looking at buildings. You have examples now that you can look at here in our town center that are built between 25 and 40. I think everybody is pretty satisfied with the buildings and the designs that have been then put there, and that would be more in line with what's in our community now.
Okay. All right. At this time, I will call for a roll call vote on the amendment as presented.
Mayor Belisi?
Yes, Councilmember McCluskey.
Yeah, I really didn't get the latter part of my question answered as far as the design components. And so I'm hinging on not voting for it based upon that.
Can you repeat your question to Mr. Swindell so he can answer that question for you?
All right. Reducing the glass glazing on the upper floors when it's approaching 110 feet on that premise that it could reach that height. The design standards that are in our form-based code, will that enhance additional design architectural features so it's more of an interesting building rather than a box building, and be more something that's more organic where people on the ground floor walking by or driving by can feel comfortable approaching and consuming and living in.
In the past, when we were originally putting together our town center design standards, we did a visual preference survey of what our community wanted with regards to buildings. So if you recall that thing, we put up a bunch of pictures of buildings and different architectural features, and people put their green dots on the stuff they like and put the red dots and stuff. And when it came to that glass thing, where you had just walls of glass, I think we got a lot of reds. So I think, I don't think the community, at least from my recollection, wanted glass curtain wall buildings. I don't see that 60% would produce that necessarily, but I think they wanted, like you said, something more organic, something more like what we've got now in the Paul Casey buildings.
Okay, and this adjustment will help create that environment.
And if somebody wants to come in and put more in, because that's the architecture they're looking for, this is only a minimum. This is not a maximum.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Swindell.
You're welcome.
Okay. City Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call on the amendment, which is to reduce from 60 to 40% glazing requirement on the upper floors?
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The amendment passed.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're back to the original amendment with the taking into consideration, or the original consideration with reflecting the amendment. We have been discussing this. We are behind in our agenda for this evening. Are there any new comments that council needs to make at this time regarding this issue? Okay, not seeing any. City Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call on our Councilmember Figueroa? Just raised his hand. Mr. Figueroa.
Yes, Madam Mayor, sorry, and I just have to do this because I know we've already complimented Commissioner Quisenberry, but if you're still there, Cliff, please come on. But I have to say this is a very huge legislation that opens up our city in so many different ways. And I do remember when you were ready to retire from the commission, and you said you would stay on to help see this through. And I understand why you said that, because you saw the necessity to have all the experience, such as yours, in helping staff and the other commissioners to get through this very important piece of the puzzle for University Place. So I wholeheartedly really want to thank you on behalf of this council, but also on behalf of our citizens, that most of them will never realize the work that you've done and others have done, but especially one where you wanted to just go ahead and retire in the sunset and go and have fun, but you stayed with this, and thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. I mean, Councilmember Figueroa, sorry. City Clerk, can you please take the roll call?
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion passes 5-1. Yeah.
Thank you again to our Planning Commission and staff on this
Well done.
item. Thank you very much.
Yes.
At this time, our final council consideration for this
Madam
year.
Mayor, point of order.
Yes.
I think
Councilmember
the city clerk was miscounting the council. She said it passed 5-1. It should have said 6-1.
I apologize. 6-1.
Unless we got rid of a council member in the middle of all this.
Yeah. All right, we're on to our final council consideration for this year, and that is our 2021-22 biennial budget adoption. We have had 2 public hearings. There is no opportunity this evening for public comment. This is before us for immediate consideration. But before we get the consideration, I would like to ask our Finance Director, Leslie Blaisdell, to come forward with a brief staff report on our 2021-22 budget. Ms. Blaisdell.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The 2021-22 proposed budget process has been a lengthy one. The call for budgets to staff went out on June 2nd. Then staff got busy compiling their budgets. Department meetings with the city manager occurred in August, and then all of the numbers were pulled together and presented to council beginning in October. We've had 3 council study sessions on October 5th, October 19th, and November 2nd. And additionally, we held 3 public hearings on the budget on October 19th, November 2nd, and November 16th. The budget is a balanced and conservative budget that assumes a continuation of 2020 levels of service to the community. There were some changes made during the various council meetings. We adjusted the alarm permit fee revenue pursuant to the fee change adopted on October 5th. And additionally, the false alarm fees were adjusted from the same ordinance. We restored the TBD funding and pavement maintenance budgets to the street fund pursuant to the court decision related to TBD fees and I-976. We included the utility tax that council approved on November 2nd, and we reduced the TBD revenue projections for the council approved reduction that begins next year in TBD fees. We've been conservative with our revenue projections for the biennium due to the still largely unknown continued impacts from COVID-19. The proposed budget includes the statutorily allowed increase in the city's ad valorem property tax in each year of the biennial budget. And tax revenues are expected to increase from 2020 year-end estimates as we project that we'll see some recovery from COVID-19 revenue losses. In conclusion, the 21-22 budget expenditure budget is a status quo budget with a modest level of inflation assumed for expenditures. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Blaisdell. At this time, may I have a motion for consideration, please?
Yes, Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the 21-22 biennial budget.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilman Keel, I second.
Okay. I have a first and a second. We have had an opportunity to study this and have public hearing on it, so I'm assuming all questions and comments and concerns have been addressed in the past. So at this time, I will ask our city clerk to please conduct the roll call vote on this.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion passes, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Yay, our final consideration for the year. At this time, we are on the city manager and council comments and reports. May I have Mr. Steve Sugg, our city manager, come forward with his report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Good evening, Steve Sugg, City Manager. And tonight I'm pleased to present to you a report on the CARES program. The update, we are complete with the work in distributing the funds that council authorized in 2 tranches, one in July and the other one in October. So let me just start off to remind council, as you all remember, we entered into the council entered into a contract with the Washington State Department of Commerce. The city received a total of $1.489 million in coronavirus relief funds that were passed by Congress and distributed to the states throughout the land. Washington State Department of Commerce then distributed on a per capita basis, and our share here at the city was $1.489 million to address city and community impacts of the COVID-19 health emergency. With regards to the use of funds, council authorized 3 buckets of that they would go into to provide relief. The first would be business relief, $690,000 of business relief, which is a city program was created to help businesses impacted by the COVID-19 health emergency. And we had good public and stakeholder input in developing that program as to how those funds would be distributed early on before council took their first action. The next one area was $232,448 in human services funding. So grants were provided through our local partner, the Families Unlimited Network, to distribute this money to individuals to deal with impacts from the COVID-19 health emergency. And then finally, city expenses. There was $566,601 in expenses of COVID-related expenses that were incurred by the city between March 1st and November 30th that are COVID-19 related, and these were necessary, and these were not previously city 2020 budget expenses. So then with regards to the business relief program, 3 items to bring to your attention. We distributed funds to 89 businesses, including 2 nonprofits. So the $690,000 got distributed to 89 University Place businesses and 2 nonprofits. The distribution to these businesses included storefront and home-based businesses with 25 or fewer full-time equivalent employees whose primary workstation is within University Place. And lastly, with regards to the business relief program, the largest distribution was $20,000 and the smallest was $1,000. So there was quite a range in there, and that was under the criteria that you set up. The second area, as I mentioned before, was the Human Services Stabilization Program. Again, the total amount that we distributed for needy individuals was $232,448. Again, the city contracted with Families Unlimited Network to assist 83 households, providing rental assistance, utility assistance with a maximum of $1,000, and child care assistance. We also partnered with, a fund partnered with our church down on 67th for food distribution, which was highly successful. Quite a few meals were distributed to families in need. Then with regards to the city portion of the COVID-related expenses, there was $566,601, $171,000 for staff substantially dedicated to providing COVID relief, $105,000 for expenses for staff emergency leave, $17,000 for police hazard duty pay, which the council approved earlier this summer, if you recall. We also had $215,547 in information technology expenses to facilitate remote work, which was very helpful during this time, and it continues to be. And then finally, $57,707 for other supplies and equipment expenses. So what are the next steps in the CARES relief program? Just to recap, all businesses and human services funds that the council authorized to be distributed by staff have been distributed. Secondly, we have submitted for reimbursement from the Washington Department of Commerce, and we've received to date $634,507 back. We expect to receive our final reimbursement of $854,543 this month, and that will close out this program. But as you know, we're not through the pandemic. We still are fighting this all the way to the end, which looks like it's going to take us into 2021. I can't predict what additional funds may become available should Congress vote to authorize additional relief funds. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I want to congratulate Council for the work that they did at a very key time in a very timely way without a whole lot of time to waste. You were able to authorize those funds, and we were able to get approximately $1.5 million of CARES relief funds out to individuals in need, along with taking care of a substantial COVID-related expense here at the city. So with that, Mayor, members of the council, my report.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. At this time, we're open for council comments and report outs. Please keep your comments brief. Council Member Figueroa. Do you have any last minute comments for this year?
Councilmember Figueroa briefly says no.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Keel, do you have any report outs or comments?
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that 2020, I could add some superlatives to that, but I'll just say 2020. It was just very odd. I want to thank my fellow council members for your flexibility and work in what we did this year, staff as well. Just a phenomenal job overall in reacting and being fluid. And to our citizens and businesses that are here, I'd like for them to know that I'm one councilwoman. I know all of my counterparts as well, projects feel the same way, that we're here for you. We want to continue to build a strong and safe city. And I'm looking forward to for 2021. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I'm going to follow Councilmember Figueroa's lead, and no, I have no comment.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. I ditto Councilmember Keel. Good riddance to 2020. I'm looking forward to whatever the vaccine has in store. Hopefully it's good news and has good outcomes so that we can restore our livability and lifestyle as we have grown to, as we have grown accustomed to it and with greater expectations. And with that, I want to wish all the businesses, all the citizens, all my fellow council members and city staff just a delightful and wonderful happy holidays and a great new year, COVID style. I should do a dance, they should do a COVID style dance, for it. And, I'm Zooming my family holidays. And so it's interesting and different, but bottom line is we need to be safe so that we can make it into 2021 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm beginning to think I could be any of the council members tonight. Yes, we all look alike, right?
Yes.
I think the comments that have been said previous are all absolutely on target. This is one year that is one for the record books, and certainly a huge shout out and thank you to the citizens of our community. You really have stepped up to the plate. They've got the resilience and the determination to get through this human disaster that we've all been facing since back in March. And just thank you to all of them. I know there's been a huge sacrifices made by individuals and families and businesses. I know we all at times share our differences of opinions on matters and issues, but I just also want to acknowledge, because oftentimes our city staff doesn't get some of the recognition that they've worked hard and earned, and we should certainly put that out there. Because as council members, we couldn't get our jobs done if it wasn't for them working behind the scenes. So, thank you for that. I do want to thank Councilmember McCluskey for putting this one issue on my radar screen and having done some more digging with regards to the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department. I'm sure most people now are aware that the county council has called for the disillusionment of the health department. They want to withdraw from it. As a city, I think it's important that we put that one as we go into 2021 squarely on our radar screen. When we talk about politicizing the public health of our communities, I think that's just a slippery slope that we should all resist with the temptation. I think if we go through this process, it's going to truly affect our city, it's going to affect our citizens, and most importantly, it will affect our most vulnerable populations in our communities. So my, if you want to call it 2021 wish, is that the city and we as a council will weigh in to oppose the breakdown of that department. It provides a huge valuable service to all of us. You know, if there's issues internal to the department, then the county needs to come up with a different way to deal with those. But taking away services that our communities need is the wrong method to do that. And with that comment, I will also wish, you know, everyone a very blessed and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Please be safe as we celebrate. You know, to Councilmember McCloskey's comment, you know, it is COVID, social distancing. I know that's a stress and a strain on everyone, but it's also the way for us to get through 2020, have a brighter 2021, and keep most people alive. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Belisi. A couple of things just quickly. RCC, I attended an RCC meeting. We'll have a franchise draft coming to you fairly soon with Comcast. I think that's getting close, and you can look forward to seeing that in a future study session with our city attorney's help. Also, at the last meeting I was at, the RCC board selected a new vice president, and I'm apparently serving in that role for a while. So,
hey.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But did certainly want to thank the community, the citizens, our residents here for everything you've been through this difficult year, and on things that we have, things that the city has worked to help you with. And if there's more things we can do, we certainly would like to know about that and do everything we can to do it. Reality is the people that get that done, as many council members have already mentioned, are our staff, the people in public works and the finance division or department, development services, the administrative team, all those folks, city legal department, they all pull together to get things done for you. And we think that's key, and we want to make sure we're doing the right things there. But very much appreciate our city staff's effort and everything they've done to represent us in this difficult time, and they've done an exemplary job in my view. Wanted to wish you all on council and in the community a Merry Christmas, blessed holiday, and look forward to picking this all up again in a few weeks with the new year. And yeah, we're ready for a new year.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. I just wanted to update council. On December 3rd, I attended a virtual meeting of the cities and towns. That's the mayors and administrators from Pierce County that get together. We had an update from Dr. Chen regarding COVID and the process for approval of a vaccine. My understanding is that the health department is currently looking at their distribution methods and are working to get a plan approved by the CDC on that distribution. So hopefully we'll be getting some information both through our city email as well as through the news media and Facebook on what that will look like come mid-December when the vaccine has a potential for rolling out. Today, this afternoon, I attended a virtual meeting with the South Sound Affordability Housing Project. I've provided you with updates on that group over the last year or two. They are moving rapidly forward in forming a legislative body or an organization, and I will be forwarding some material onto you later this week via email that shows their interlocal agreement that they're hoping to get communities to sign on to. This is a voluntary participation organization at this point. But I think it is worthy enough for council to discuss this at our retreat in January, whether or not we would like to participate, because like any other organization, participation comes with some financial requirements on our part, but we can discuss the potential use of this organization and hopefully have our executive, Bruce Danmeyer, brief us on what this organization is, the intent of it, et cetera, moving forward. So look for my email later this week so that you can get some familiarity with it. December 11th, this Friday, from 4 to 8 p.m., I want to remind council that that Green Firs and the Village Collective, the vendors and businesses in both locations are planning what they term a reverse parade as a celebration of the holidays, and they will be having entertainers and giveaways at their various businesses. So they're put it on your calendar and plan on participating. It's intended to be a drive-through, socially maintained, masking, etc. But it's an opportunity for these struggling businesses to showcase their services and to the community. So I highly encourage you to pass the word along to your families and neighbors, and hopefully we can have as close to a holiday celebration or get together as is allowed under current COVID standards. Because we are wrapping up our meeting, I just wanted to remind council and the community we are canceling our December 21st meeting. So we have a free evening. And then please, council, mark in your calendar, January 23rd will be what we consider our council retreat. It is a Saturday. I will be sending out an email on Wednesday to council requesting that you provide me with input on some of your top 3 priorities that you would like to discuss, not go into the weeds on, but have some discussion on that we can use moving forward for planning our agendas and study sessions, etc., and potential goal setting. So be aware and please respond to the email, because I'm requesting that I get your responses within a week of the email going out. So please start thinking along those lines. With that, I just want to wish my fellow council members a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy New Year. It's been a pleasure this past year while we're not together, and I do miss not seeing you and being in close proximity. I appreciate you working through these tough times since March and helping to make these virtual meetings go as smoothly as possible. And we could not do it without the help of our staff in doing this. So thank you very much to staff for facilitating this and helping make it as smooth as possible. So with that, I am going to close out the city manager council portion of our meeting and go into study session. We have 2 final items and approximately 30 minutes to cover these 2 items. If we want to end the meeting at 9 o'clock and we want to not discuss an item, we can put that off into our January meeting if possible. So we have some flexibility there. But what we have is our second study session for passage of an ordinance in January or sooner, or sometime in January, February, is our purchasing policy. So with that, I'm going to ask Leslie Blaisdell to give us a little brief update on what the purchasing policy is.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The update to the purchasing policy was prompted by a council request to include local preference language. At that time, staff was already working on revamping the format of the policy to make it more online friendly. Staff currently view and use policy documents online rather than in the printed form, and our purchasing policy has had very little change since it was created when the city incorporated. Our initial project focused on a change to the formatting and look to the document to make it easier for staff. We added a sidebar that includes frequently asked questions and tips. We've included definitions and related RCWs within the various sections of the policy rather than listing them on a separate page. Additionally, we've embedded links within the document to any outside resources referenced so that when the policy refers to a municipal code, an RCW, or an outside document, staff can click on it from within the document to do further research and review. The basic policies are unchanged from our current policy document, and they are simply in a different order and formatted to make it easier to read. The changes that we've included in this new document are we added section 1.7, sustainable purchasing, and that addresses local preference, environmental factors, and social equity factors. We adjusted section 2.4, which is the limits for public works, single and multi-craft projects, to reflect the recent updates to the RCW. And language was added to section 1.10 related to city council approval. We are proposing some changes that are not yet included in the document. We'd like to include adjustments to our solicitation limits related to competitive bidding requirements and city manager and council approval requirements. These limits have not been adjusted in many years. When researching other municipalities, we found that it varies greatly. For instance, the range of when purchases go to a city council varied from $50,000 to $250,000. Staff, however, has been unable to find a statutory-based limitation on this authority, so it is set by the entity. After evaluating the other municipalities and talking to city staff, we are recommending the following changes, and we feel the new limits continue to ensure that the city is getting quotes and safeguarding the monies entrusted to us by our citizens while allowing staff to continue to perform services efficiently. We are looking to change the current limit for getting quotes is anything over $2,500 or more, and we are looking to increase that to $5,000 or more. We are looking to increase the city council approval from $30,000 to $50,000. A few questions came up at our first study session that I wanted to include and address. One was, how is the social equity portion valued? These are simply items to consider when reviewing any bids. There's no point system, and a good example would be something like a quote for lighting. At first glance, an initial price may be higher, but if we look at changing to LED lights, you can factor in utility cost savings and various other savings related to that. And those are the things that can play into whether you choose perhaps a quote that appears higher on paper, but when you evaluate it fully in the long run, it is the better option. The question came up as, when has there been an exception to the competitive process? There are occasions where there's a sole source purchase, but that has to be a clearly and legitimately limited to a single source of supply. It doesn't happen a lot, but one example is our light poles that we use. There really is only one source where we can get that particular one that we use. Additionally, emergency purchases, and that would be for an unforeseen circumstance beyond the control of the city. That either presents a real immediate threat to the proper performance of essential functions or will likely result in material loss or damage to property. And then there are state contract purchases. We can piggyback on state contracts. There's a database online. The state does all the bidding, and it just makes it easier on staff. Question on, how is the informal bid process used? When we do informal bids, which is that can be done by telephone contact, an email, a fax, or internet searches looking for the best price. And the question related to, are quotes an annual bid per vendor, or is it for each bid? Quotes are done for each purchase. It's not an annual process unless it's for a continuing contract like janitorial or landscape maintenance, where you're contracting for the full year or sometimes 2 years. If a council approves these adjustments, we'll update the document that will be presented to council for policy approval sometime in January. In addition to the policy itself, there will need to be conforming changes to the municipal code, and to that end, a draft ordinance was also included in your packet. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Blaisdell. Councilmember Figueroa, I understand that you were the initiator of this proposal. Do you have any comments at this time regarding this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. Ms. Blaisdell, when you're talking about solicitation limits, can you go a bit further on that?
Sure. For small purchases, anything under $2,500, there is no requirement to get bids. We still recommend staff, do some due diligence and make sure they're getting the best price, but there's no requirement. Once it exceeds $2,500, you currently have to get some informal quotes, and that can be done by phone, internet search, email. Then once it clears 15,000, between 15,000 and 30,000, that's when you get written quotes. People have to submit a written quote for us to evaluate. And anything over 30,000, and these are all our current limits, requires a formal bid process where we go out for an RFP or an RFQ.
So back to the 2,500, less than 2,500, no quotes, or even the 2,500 informal quotes. Again, the premise of this whole legislation was UP first, UP businesses first, and I didn't hear in there how local preferences will be given during, especially in this less than 2,500 within staff discretion. What would prompt them to say, hey, UP first, businesses first?
Well, the addition of section 1.7 includes the social equity factors that should be considered when looking for a vendor to purchase an item from, and the use of local businesses is listed in there. So it is one of the things that we would be asking staff to consider.
Correct. It's listed, but it's not a preference. And I mean, the whole thing is it hasn't been applied in many years, and as far as picking UP businesses first, we've had this complaints at various times. So why couldn't we be more specific in saying, UP businesses get a preference of, I'm just making this up, 10% points, if you're looking at that, or 5%, or maybe there's another preference to say, that they will get the preference. All being equal, at the end of the day, if there's someone from Furcrest versus someone in UP and everything's being equal, what prohibits that staff person from saying, oh, I live in Furcrest, and so I like Furcrest, so I think I'm going to give it to Furcrest. See, that's what I'm trying to prevent. Or Lakewood or Tacoma. And that's not happening here. This proposal is not doing what the legislation asked for.
I can bring in Matt Kaser on this. As far as the research we did, the language we used is what's allowed per statutes or per the rules. We checked with the state auditor's office, and this is the language that was allowed to be used. We can certainly look at revamping that. Matt, are you on the line?
I'm on the line. So let me start first.
So Matt, real quick, what prohibits us? Just be very specific, and not a lot of fluff here, because we don't have that much time, according to the mayor. What prohibits us specifically of saying to staff, saying UP preference is given, all being equal?
The short answer to your question is the state auditor. Here's where you're at on this. And Leslie's touched on this a bit, and I am going to be grossly oversimplifying things, not because we're short on time. You have two categories of goods and acquisition methodology, those that are subject to competitive type requirements and those that are not. And what this proposal, under our current practice, you have a current threshold of 2,500 that serves as your dividing line. The proposed revisions ups that to $5,000. On those that are above $5,000, there is a process under the competitive requirements, which is included in the purchasing policies. I'll note that it's at proposed paragraph 2.13, which follows some degree of state law where you are allowed to take into account local tax preferences. on competitive procurement. It's not frequently used, but that is the one express requirement that is allowed under state law. On those that are below the competitive procurement, local jurisdictions have a certain degree of flexibility. Overarching that flexibility are a couple of basic things. First, these are taxpayer funds. Has taxpayer funds, there's a general expectation that the taxpayers receive their goods at the best possible price. The second part of that is that those goods should generally be acquired without favor or second guessing where they come from. Part of the discussion, and you can go down a very slippery slope on this, are two questions. What does it mean to be a UP-based business? And we talked earlier tonight about CARES Act funds. You know, do you have a retail storefront here in UP? Do you simply have a mailbox? At what point? And you can over-lawyer that piece very quickly. Trust me, I can get you some standards that can over-lawyer that. But the second part is, what does it mean to be a preference? So do you apply X% to say, well, you're here in UP, so you have a slight edge, to use your example, on somebody in Furcrest, somebody in Lakewood? How are you comparing comparables? So what you can do is you can raise the limits, which is part of the recommendation, by doubling those limits from its 2,500 to its 5. And within those limits, you're allowed to consider an array of factors, not the least of which is to say, hey, if they're local, we like local. We can spend our discretionary monies there without following a flow chart, without following a matrix, or without following a grid. So you can say, hey, there's a good here in UP that we want to get. We don't have to overthink this. Let's just do it, provided it's within that proposed limit of $5,000. So that's a slightly longer-winded version of a short answer than I was hoping to get you. But those are sort of the hard limits.
You never answered the question, Matt. Come on. You just said up to 5,000, it shouldn't have to be a big deal.
That's what he said.
What I didn't hear is there's a preference being directed to staff so that we can be assured as a council, we can be assured as our businesses in UP that they have a shot at this. You know, if everything's being equal, then why wouldn't we direct staff in some format and saying, hey, you know, if everything's equal, then you're obligated to pick, you know, a UP business. Why wouldn't they not be picked? And that, matter of fact, it's probably not equal because the UP business is going to be paying, we're going to get tax benefits from them. So I don't understand why we can't have something that is a lot clearer than the smoke I just got from you.
Well, respectfully, there's no smoke from what you just got from me. What you got is a mechanism. What you got is a mechanism that will avoid audit findings, that takes us up to the line, to the ability that we retain the discretion to still continue to get the best possible goods at the best possible price and to preserve
the same thing. You didn't answer the during question. What prohibits us from stating and requiring staff to pick the UP business? Answer that question. Just answer it.
It comes down to state law. State law.
What state law prohibits us from doing that? Because you said on up to 5,000, we can pretty much have discretionary decision making. That's what you said.
You do have the discretionary decision making.
So give me the state law that prohibits us from doing that.
The piece on the local preference where it allows you to take into consideration tax returns that's identified in paragraph 2.13 on competitive bidding is RCW 3930.040.
That's not competitive bidding. You just said discretionary.
But that's the only piece in state law that allows any form of express local preference. Otherwise, you're below that line.
No, I know that, but I'm just picking on that first 5,000. What can't we at least on that segment of this whole big picture say you will pick UP businesses?
And it goes back to the original point, Councilmember Figueroa. You have yet to identify what does it mean to be a UP-based business, or what does it mean for
Then
preference?
help us
When are you comparing
outline that,
comparables?
just like we did with the CARES Act. We outlined it, what it means to be a UP business, one that, you know, has a storefront or whatever the case may be. We can say what that is.
Well, you can. However, you take it from an easy to understand policy to an over lawyered policy.
No, it's not. We did it with the CARES Act fairly easily.
So I think we'll agree to disagree on that point.
Well, there it is, Madam Mayor. I'm not satisfied with the answers that staff brought back.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, you were second on this legislative action. Do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was the second on this, and Councilmember Figueroa went exactly where I wanted to go in this conversation about the preference. Now, the difference, though, is that, Matt, I think I heard what you're saying, and if I can try to check my understanding here with this, because I want to tell you, I signed on this second for the exact reason why Councilmember Figueroa brought this forward, and like I'm really focused on how do we drive the legally drive more business that we do at the city to the businesses that are within the city. So what I think I heard you say was that for things that we're doing that are 5,000 and below, we don't have to bid them, and we have the flexibility to go through some machinations of looking at calling different people and doing this kind of stuff, and then picking the business that we think is best suited for what it is that we're trying to purchase. That's what I think I heard you say.
Yes, you heard correctly.
So then, in my mind, then it just becomes a matter of practice at the staff level, and maybe this is something that we talk with the city manager about, and maybe even measure, you know, with the city manager, percentages of businesses that fall into that 5,000 that get let to city of UP businesses, and do it that way. So then it becomes, and I'm saying this to you, Councilman Figueroa, so it becomes more of a internal business practice for that 5,000 below, that's what we do. Because we do it that way, because the law specifically, I think what I'm hearing you say, prohibits us from saying, and that was the key for me, because you kept answering the question, what is it? And I agree with you. I want to know what it is too, right? That stops us from doing, just like you were saying, Councilman Figueroa, and say, hey, we want to give it to, you know, all things being equal, we want to give it to a city business. I think what I heard you saying is the law prohibits us from saying it that way.
It crosses us from crossing that line.
Right. And if that's the case, then we don't say it, but if it's part of the practice, then I think that gets us there. Okay. And now, so for the items that are 5,000 and above, that requires us to do a process, you know, a selection process. It sounded like to me you said that in that process, we do have the capability of giving preference to local business. And I can't remember the term that you said was.
You can consider that it's discretionary. You can consider the tax benefits received by the local jurisdiction. In practice, that's not going to be much at the edges.
Okay. So what do you mean by much at the edges?
So let's say you got 3 quotes. One's 5K, one's 6K, one's 7K. You're not going to, and one of those that's not the 5K one is a UP-based business.
Okay,
That number, that UP business isn't going to be the low quote.
got it. Okay, I got it. Okay, right. And I think, and the gotcha to me there is going to be the fact that we have to take the low quote, right?
Yeah. Right.
Now, but the word that I put in there is responsive, right?
Yeah.
The lowest responsive quote. And so I think we have to rely on staff to make sure that they're looking at that. And I know staff does, but I think that's an important word, because at least, back in the olden days when I was an executive in a public agency and I looked at these, they were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions. The difference was bigger, but you could actually see where people missed the intent. And I don't know between the $5,000 and $6,000 if there's much. That may be the edges you're talking about.
But the edges are going to be significantly smaller.
Yeah. So I get it.
Yeah, and it frequently won't make a difference, but it's there in state law. The proposed policy adopts that state law language.
Yeah. So I mean, my and I'll say this and I'll be quiet for a minute, but my feeling is that with the 5,000 below, if we somehow can have a mechanism that allows council to check in on that and measure the practice, even though since we can't necessarily write it down on paper, like you shall do this because it's illegal. If there's a way that we can measure the practice and then come back to it over a certain period of time to help council get a feel for it, that's in fact what we're doing. I think that would help me.
Okay, Council Member Fleming, you had your hand up.
I do. I want to preface my comments that I agree 100% with what Councilmember Figueroa has stated and wants to get to, and the idea of University Place first. And I had to smile, Kent, when you were talking about back in the old days, because A, you're too young, and B, I can talk about the old days. But, the original legislation that we had on this was actually put forward by Councilmember Brooks and Grassi and myself. And the original legislation did say University Place only and first. But we had a really smart attorney with the city at the time, similar to Matt. And the two things they pointed out was, number one, where we wanted to get to, where you want to get to, Javier, we violated two state laws. One was the anti-discrimination laws, and the other was the anti-competitive laws. And Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but if my memory serves me, those were the two laws that we ran up against. And we had to, so we figured we would backdoor it and say, well, yeah, we're going to, keep everything competitive, but we're a governmental agency, so we're obligated to follow the competitive bid. And so we thought we would just backdoor it and have some pretty language to say, yeah, we'll do it until the state auditor gets involved. We've got to pass the smell test, when we're doing that kind of stuff, which will get us into trouble. So, at the end of the day, you have to set some thresholds that have to be considered reasonable, but it allows for competition, because back to the comment, you go for the lowest bidder, whether we like it or not. No, we are compelled to follow that. And as much as I really dislike it, because my personal feelings, if I were king for a day and had my wand, we would only do business with UP businesses first, foremost, and go outside if we had to. The state law just doesn't allow for it. And so I wanted to share that perspective, and certainly Matt can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's how I remember this particular issue being crafted, and how we had to kind of navigate those waters so we didn't get in trouble doing that. So is my memory good?
I was aware of the anti-discrimination piece that you had referred to, but now that you mention it, it doesn't surprise me. And the one thing I'll say to you is a policy such as this at the end of the day, it protects the city. And I talked earlier, in terms of making sure that the taxpayer gets the best rate and everything else, but it protects the city. So that way, local businesses and those who are outside aren't saying, hey, you only got that contract because of XYZ. No, you got it because you got a good deal, for the goods at the end of the day. And one of the things I would encourage council to think about as you go through this is identify those businesses. There's a small works roster for the public works side. Who's capable of doing those works and encouraging folks to get on, say, the MRSC small works roster and things like that. So that way those goods can be legitimately sourced. So that way when they are above that proposed $5,000 threshold, they're on that call list. And that there's a good faith basis to call them for those services. So I appreciate the historical approach, but I'll also throw that out there to council as well.
Okay, we have approximately 10 minutes left of our agenda this evening. I don't want to cut this short, but I will be asking for an extension for this particular study session item. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, you were the next one with your hand up. So.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi, and we'll try and may hear me ask for an extension here in about 10 minutes. So I had a number of questions on a couple of different subjects, but let's stay on this one briefly. So Matt, is it possible the city could say within its policies that if there's a reason to think that a UP vendor can provide the good or service, that they will that staff will make a request for a quote?
What I would say is I wouldn't expressly call it out, and it becomes something akin to a practice.
Okay, so that's basically, at the end of the day, we want our citizens to get the best value they can, both in terms of cost and the quality of the product that's delivered. That doesn't run contrary to that, but you're saying informally, yes, we could do that. The city manager can suggest that to whoever makes the various calls.
Yeah.
Am I hearing that right?
And I think Leslie can speak more to this. I think in practice, we do attempt, insofar as practical, to source as much of our stuff locally as we can. And locally, I mean within, the city limits. And Leslie, I don't know if you want to speak to that further in terms of some of the, since you're the procurement officer.
Yeah, I know that staff, attempts it as much as possible. And some of the oil changes can go to the local shops, Precision Tune and various shops. The larger equipment, they haven't had any luck finding anyone that can fix the larger equipment here in town. When we did council food, I know city clerk was always trying to source the food for council from local companies. It's just one piece I will point out that the federal government on any federal dollars, so any federal grants, they do not allow any local preference. So that's why you'll see in the policy, if this is a federal grant, stop, because those rules trump anything we have written in our policy. So staff does. There just aren't a lot of the things that we buy street lights. There isn't a vendor in the town, but in the city, I know staff does try to do as much business with local companies as they can.
We don't have a cement plant. We don't have an asphalt plant. We don't have a variety of an office supply system that delivers a variety of things. So that are typical issues for us as a buyer. Okay. In your informal bid process, so that's everything at 2,500 or and below, or possibly 5,000 and below. We get informal quotes, and do I have that right?
Anything right now, anything under 2,500 does not require any quotes at all. You can just say, I need this item. I'm going to call this business and get this item. We do. It's not required. We still encourage staff, if you have the time, do some due diligence and make sure that you're getting a good price. It's the current policy, once it's over $2,500, then between 2,500 and 14,999, they have to get informal quotes, make some phone calls, do some internet searches.
You bet. And do we require them retain a record of their informal quotes?
Yes, those have to be listed on the purchase order because the state auditor does check that. And so it's all listed on the purchase order and yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, good. I'm going to switch subjects here a little bit. So we have in the policies, you talk about RFQs and RFPs. Thank you for bringing that up. The city uses both processes. The state law requires that we use requests for qualifications, RFQs, if an architect or an engineer is involved. And that's sort of the defining thing, and the policy says as much. There is a difference in what that quote looks like, or excuse me, what we get back looks like to us. If it's an RFQ, we get all their qualifications, but we see nothing about price. Price can't be part of it at that stage. Later in the process, yes, but not when you're selecting it. If it's a request for proposal, you get a lot more detail and you get an estimate of cost. In fact, you probably get a hard cost figure. That is, to some degree, it's known to you. We have had the occasion here that we use RFQs beyond what the state, in places, at times, I should say, when the state isn't requiring us to use RFQs. Why is that?
Do you have a particular situation?
Yes, every one of our planning contracts that we've had that I've been aware of has been listed and presented to us as a request for qualifications and not as a request for proposals. And as such, we don't get, or the city doesn't have an opportunity to see the cost of what it is they're trying to contract.
So for consulting type contracts?
Yes, that are not architectural engineering. They are planning consultants. Those are not the same things. So
I would have to go back and look at the specific cases to find out why that was, to find out. Yeah.
You bet. I'd be happy to help you identify some of those.
Yeah,
there's several that come to mind quickly. It's been a discussion I've had at various times with the city administration.
Mayor Pro Tem, before you go on to your next idea, can we get an extension?
Absolutely. So I move that we extend the meeting until 9:20.
I second Councilmember Keel.
Okay. I have a first and a second. Is there any dissension amongst the ranks? Okay, not seeing any, it's passed unanimously.
I don't think there's any happiness either.
No, no happiness.
There's no dissension. Yeah.
Looks could kill.
Okay, so I'd like to see if we could tighten the process in our rules internal to us of when we use RFP and RFQ, because I think it's in our city's best interest to use RFP when it's available to us, because you have more flexibility in how you make your decision. And you'll notice in the policy that we may or may not consider price, but we may. It sounds like it's discretionary the way it's written. Okay. Then a different issue. So I'm going to run this hypothetical by you. Let's say that there's a department director, and this has nothing to do with our city before I go any further. This is another place, not UP. Let's say that there's a department director who needs to buy some things. And it happens he's got some expertise in this area, and he decides to start a company. And he needs to get his company off the ground, so he's having his department buy from him the materials that he believes he needs for his department. So basically, he's buying for himself. What in our process would help us discover that?
We do double check for addresses, whether they match current city staff. We ask city staff to report if they have a business. The auditor does check on that and asks staff every year, but we do a check when we enter a new vendor to verify the addresses don't match something that's already in the system, and double check those sorts of things.
Okay. Thank you. That's some help if they don't have a PO box. So, yeah. Okay. Good enough. But there are things like that that really happen.
Mhm.
And yeah, anyhow, it's a great way to end an otherwise bright career. But let's see. All right, those are the things I wanted to touch on. I have the request about the RFP, RFQ, and the potential that we informally, apparently, look at making sure we're asking from city businesses when it's likely they could be a potential seller. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember McCluskey, you were next with your hand up.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Belisi. As we do preferences in selection, it always brings to my mind the right ethical motivation for the right ethical outcome. I think we need to frame the university place preference, even if it's under $5,000, with that particular framing in mind. Sure, we do want to preference UP businesses, encouraged to buy local, but I want to be cognizant that, we don't go on that slippery, unethical slope to stay. And also, when you preference UP businesses, you may also preclude innovation and creativity that some outsourcing can bring in, even if it's under $5,000, and even if it is a university place business. So looking at that criteria, so it's not just a no-brainer. It's a UP business, they can satisfy it, we're going to give it to them. Look at some of the other components to that decision so that we make the right and best choice for where we want to get to. So that was my comments in regards to that. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, you had your hand up again for another comment.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate the following conversation, on this topic. And I would just say that at least it's been my perception based on data and contracts that I've seen that we don't give a lot of business to UP businesses. A lot of those businesses, it goes to Tacoma, a lot of the stuff. And I'm talking about things that we buy, I think, on a regular basis, like the vehicle stuff. I mean, we talk a lot about oil changes and all that stuff, but I know for a fact that for years, our fleet maintenance went to some places in Tacoma. And I'm not talking about the big, heavy trucks. I'm talking about the cars, the vans and the Broncos or whatever it is that we drive, the vehicles that we drive, the 7 or 8. I would imagine that there's a business in UP, that could do that type of work. And I know for a number of years it didn't go here, so it's that kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And if there's a way that it sounds like to me that the way it's written legally, we've done it the best we can based on what Matt is saying and what Leslie has told us. So then my next step would be interest, Matt, is to work with Steve is to work with our city manager to figure out what can he and Matt come up with as far as best practices that staff could look at to help begin even take that a little bit further, driving it to the businesses. Because I mean, I don't want anybody to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, how do we take it the next step to where we're legal, but we've got these practices and everybody knows about the practices, and we do it and we stay right with the auditor, but we're also staying right with our businesses within our city, because I think we owe them that. that we do that for them. So anyway, without going.
Okay. Councilmember Figueroa, you had another comment.
Yeah. Let's see here. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, just as a reminder, and Matt too, remember what I prefaced my statement. Everything being equal. I didn't say, if the UP business is much higher than someone in Faircrest, I'm not saying that. I understand about giving away taxpayer money and everything else. All I'm saying is, if everything's being equal in the two low bids, or the best bids for whatever reason, other criteria comes into place, and staff is, and I'm talking about the up to $2,500 or up to $5,000, and they have the discretionary about who they pick. Other than if everything's being equal, and that's a UP and Faircrest or Tacoma, if you're telling me we can't have some kind of a directive that, everything being equal, it should go to a UP, well, then I'll go with Councilmember Keel's suggestion, is we need reports back twice a year, maybe every 6 months, saying this is what's happened. This is the bids, the contracts that went out to under 5,000, and this were the UP businesses. This were the outside of UP businesses, and let's hear a report to see what your best practice has been. Obviously, from Councilmember Worthington and Ms. Blaisdell, there is at least over the $2,500. There is a checklist of people that you have to prove that you got quotes from. So we should be able to see that as well. Let's see some reports. To me, this is important in order to to say, is the practice being adhered to? And why not? Why wouldn't, if everything's being equal? Why wouldn't staff? What is the decision driving scenario with staff not picking UP business, everything being equal? I'm not trying to say give them, let's forget about the preference, all right? I'm just saying at least from being equal. So I think that we need, if we can't do something as far as language, I begin to understand that maybe that comes across as being illegal. I have a hard time thinking that if it's discretionary, then discretionary means that we should be able to pick a UP business. But I'll leave that aside for now, and saying that hopefully that the message is there with Mr. Sugg, if you're listening, if you're still there, of what best practice is. And that includes our procurement officer, Ms. Blaisdell, what that means to this council, and to our citizens and to our UP businesses. And I think that there should be a report. I've never seen a report of any such thing since I've been on council for 12 years. And so I think it's time that we take, I think that will be a really nice report to be able to see what is the best practices happening in our city, and what's happening to our tax dollars that we go and tax our citizens with, utility tax and TBD tax and franchise fees tax. I think we should be able to give a report to ourselves and to our citizens. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Does staff have the information based on the discussion tonight to make any recommendations or changes to the proposed legislation?
Are we going to do another study session? I know Councilmember Worthington had wanted to tighten up some of the RFP, RFQ language. We could work on that, come back for a final study.
Yep.
And then
sounds like what we need to do.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Kaiser, do you have enough time in the next 10 minutes to discuss the sewer, our last study session item?
I can talk fast, but I can't talk that fast.
Okay.
Unless council wants to talk sewers with benefit of myself and Mr. Swindell and his technical, I hope his technical issues are squared away. Otherwise, we can enjoy the last 24 days of 2020 and kick it off in 21.
I agree.
Do I have an agreement from council to put this off onto the next, another meeting? Okay.
So what I hear is saying is we're flushing it.
Yeah, we are flushing it.
No, that's not true.
I had to
We're
get
not
it in
flushing it.
Okay, well, with that, we've covered all items on our agenda for this evening. I want to wish all of you again a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you in the next year on our first meeting in January.
All right.
So
Thank you.
stay
Merry
safe,
Christmas.
wear your mask, and social distance.
Merry Christmas. Happy New
Merry
Year,
Christmas.
y'all.
Everybody.
Good.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.